2020 Tantra, Crown Tantra info in the description. So, as many of you know, I was supposed to do a 30-minute segment with Alex Jones, but Alex is talking about he may never do another podcast again, so it's not looking like that's going to happen. Anyway, I'll get right into it. I know a lot of people are already familiar with my work, but maybe those that aren't can share this with people that are, or maybe those that aren't can watch this, or you can share with people that aren't already familiar with my work. And I feel like if you are observing this, then it's not too late for you to apply this. So, as far as etymology is concerned, breath or spirit means breath. Those are synonymous. Breath is spirit. Spirit is breath. So the breath is the spirit, or the spirit. Spirituality is breath work. The practice of applying the breath is spirituality. Conscious breathing, consciously accepting the breath, is what spirituality is. You know, letting the breath catch you and not denying it, not rejecting it, because it is the wholesome spirit. So we can look at many scriptures, the references to the breath. Um, my favorite one would be that applies to now. I feel like would be in Matthew 3:11 from the New Testament, where John the Baptist, he says that he baptizes with water for repentance, and the one that comes after him that is mightier than him baptizes with the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, which is the breath. So the Christ, which is who he's referring to, baptizes with the breath. So air brings fire. So some people say spirit fire, but air brings fire. And we can look at the chain of elements here. From the darkness comes the light, obviously, and let there be light. When if you're looking at Genesis, it's the darkness was there, and it was let there be light, right? That's kind of life. God is breathing the breath of life into life in general, and then to man to make spirit, to make life. So we have the chain of elements. I know a lot of people that might be familiar with psychedelics and stuff talk about the machine elves. A lot of people are familiar with El and what El means, Elohim, and what that is derived from, and how the etymology of that. But as far as the elements, we go to elementary school, but we don't know anything about the actual elements and the balance of them, the order of them, and the way God is expressing creation, or consciousness is expressing creation, if you don't like the word God. So if you're looking at the word elements itself, El means God. So it would be God immense. Elements would be God immense, or states of God, like God's the mental states of God, or because everything, you could say everything is mind, body is mind in 3D. The universe is the mind in physical form. There's no separation. So when we align with the spirit or the breath, we interface with the creator. There's oneness there. The chain of elements is ether, air, fire, water, earth. So we look at the circadian rhythm of the day. It depends on how you look at it, but it's apparent as far as the day starts in darkness, and then the sun rises. So you're starting with the ether, the dark matter, the blackness, the darkness. Then you're having your air. As air gets more sped up and condensed and bounces off itself, then you have the friction that creates fire. The fire creates a more humid air, which creates water, and the water itself, as the light itself decays upon the water, then you get the algae, which lays way for earth, or the earth element. So you're having ether or air, however you want to look at it. No real separation. There's no real separation from all of this. This is all light, or darkness in motion, however you want to look at it, because light is projected darkness. So the start of the day, if you align with the breath, or start with breath work before food and water, you're aligning with the chain of course of the consciousness. So whenever you start the day with breath work, you're going to see exactly which foods you that make you dehydrated, and which ones cause inflammation. The more that you're doing the breath work, the more you're doing diaphragmatic expansion, the more you feel exactly the location of the food and which food it is. You're getting more in touch with your bowels as you do this. So it's gonna, you're pushing, when you push on the tissue pushes back, and in that process, that snapping back process of the tissue through the diaphragmatic oscillation, you're having the release of trash or garbage or mucoid plaque, whatever whatever have you. And then once the plaque is purged, then the inflammation can begin to go down because those cells can breathe more. And again, breath is the communication. Chemi, again, is chemistry. The basis of chemistry or communication is the breath. So the way you communicate with God or yourself is through the breath. Your relationship with your breath is your relationship with yourself. So whenever you're starting the day with the breath work, you're communicating with, you're communing and communicating with your source, however you want to look at this. And this is on top of that spiritual side of it, or metaphysical side of it, the more subtle side of it. It's going to jumpstart your digestion. It's going to improve your circulation. Obviously, breath is controlling your nervous system, which is controlling your heart rate, which is controlling your endorphin and hormonal flow. Because if you're in a sympathetic nervous system, then you're going to constantly release the endorphins that go with that, which would be adrenaline. And that comes with a certain breath pattern, which is 18 or more breaths per minute. And as you slow that down, you shifting into the parasympathetic. So the more that you have cells breathing unobstructed, the more the spirit inhabits the body. Feeling is healing. The more that you feel the spirit, which is you, is no separation. The more that you feel, the more that you heal. So that's the feeling is healing. That's the remedy. Ultimately, the awareness brings the healing. So the more cells breathing, the more awareness, the more the spirit is inhabiting the body, the more you inhabit the body, and the more you feel, and the more that, since there's no separation between you and the universe, the more the universe is feeling itself. So with that, then it's just less offense if there's more feeling, if there's more acknowledgement. So like I said, 18 or more shallow breaths per minute locks you into the sympathetic. And if you're in 4 or less breaths per minute, then you're in the parasympathetic nervous system. When you're in the parasympathetic nervous system, you're going more toward the delta state. When you're in sympathetic, then you're in the beta state. So when you're in your waking consciousness, breathing unconsciously, you are in the beta state. So this is the brainwave frequency that, when you're under stress, you're definitely in beta. You're just in your identity is the body. You're in fight or flight when you're in the beta state. When you're in delta, you can feel beyond the body and you can perceive the oneness of things. It's a lot easier to realize the identity that is greater than the personas that the body created. So we suffer when our breath pattern doesn't match what we're doing. So if you're sleeping and you just pass out and you were stressed all day and you're in a sympathetic nervous system mode when you go to sleep, you're going to have your bad dreams. You're not going to remember your dreams. You're going to be releasing adrenaline while you're sleeping. So then your body's under stress. You're having these stressful dreams. You're not metabolizing the food like you would if your body was relaxed. So you have to have, in order for peace to exist, you have to have your breath in alignment with what you're doing. If you're running miles, you would want to be in the sympathetic nervous system more so than the parasympathetic. You want to have more breaths per minute depending on what you're doing. If you're doing something that requires the physical avatar, the beast, the devil, if you're doing more of those activities, then you need to be in the sympathetic nervous system. If you're in a state of, at your desk or going to sleep or in your car, you should be in the parasympathetic nervous system. The more that you're in the parasympathetic nervous system, the more you're going to heal. We restore our endorphins and our hormones while we're in the parasympathetic nervous system, while we're in the parasympathetic state. So the breath itself is producing DMT, which produces dreams. Dreams are really just moments when there is a total light spectrum awareness in the brain. Because again, we see with our brains. We're not seeing with our eyes. Our eyes are relaying information to the brain, to the pineal, the optic nerve, and then it's viewed from internally. Or you could look at it like it's a projection from inside that's bouncing off the firmament and coming back through the eyes, and we're getting a flipped image. Because like they say, if you really look into the optics and the mechanics of the eye, it's a flipped image that's getting flipped back into the brain. so that you can perceive this reality from the way that you perceive it now, upright, or gravity, or whatever, left, right, up, down. That's all your controlled trip, your controlled hallucination, or however you want to look at it, your default position. So the breath is controlling the perception ultimately, because the breath is creating the DMT. The breath is, and the DMT is creating the dreams, and the dreams are bleeding into this basically is a dream itself. It's not, there's no separation from dreaming and waking life. There's no separation from God and the devil. There's no separation from the body and consciousness, metaphysical and physical. There's no separation. So the more that you're getting in touch with the breath, the more that you're piercing that veil of separation, that illusion of separation. So the more that you align with God's breath consciously with breath work, the more you create and experience the Creator through the creative process. Creation is alignment. When you're inspired, you are magical or magnetic. If the breath is respected and cultivated, the creative process of having a baby will bring about a baby that is more self-aware. You can't align with the spirit and be with people who don't grow with you. The breath purges parasites inside and out. So the more that you respect your breath, which is the spirit, the more that you will be aligned and possessed by the spirit. You will be aligned with the spirit and possessed by the source of the spirit, which is the truest identity, which is God or consciousness, your truest identity, however you want to look at this. Not to be facetious, just to say that alignment with God, it dissolves the separation. So, a fully breathing body is inhospitable for parasites. Parasites flourish when the body oxidizes and circulation of blood and air is poor. So, parasites live in plaque. And when you brush your teeth to get the plaque off so the microbials don't decay in your mouth, you don't realize that you're just brushing up here, but everywhere that food touches, when it goes from here to the back door, everywhere it touches, leaving a film of plaque. And as you continually eat those foods that create that plaque, the more that the parasites flourish in the system. So when the plaque calcifies, because it gets harder and harder the more that you continually create that mucus. Again, the mucous membrane is there to stick to toxins so that the body can purge those toxins out. But if you continually take toxins in, then the mucus just sits and it begins to calcify, and all the cells beneath it begin to die. And then parasites, they're just doing their job. They're not a bad thing, or they can be good or bad, however you want to look at that, but they're just doing their role. The parasite's going to come and eat up whatever is decaying and dying to convert the energy back into fresh energy. So it's not a good or bad thing. It just is what it is. Parasites are just doing their job. So the more that you have cells that can't breathe, the more the cells begin to oxidize and decay, and then that becomes a feasting ground and larva ground for parasites. So the collective internal parasite landscape, you look at the collective microbial balance of the species, that landscape in our bodies is directly reflected by the parasitic people on Earth. So if we as a species are overrun by parasites internally, then externally we'll be overrun by parasites. And parasites live in colonies in the body. You could look at probiotics as a good parasite, however you want to look at it. And whatever you want to deem it, that's your distinction. But as far as just the observable reality of what is, the more that the body is colonized by parasites, the less that the body is breathing and communicating with itself, with its source. So the more that it's colonized inside, the more that the world is colonized, the more that we experience colonialism and pain, ultimately. That's just the nature of that process of rejecting the breath. Pain comes with that. Because pain is just a language to remind you of what not to do. Not that pain is a bad thing either. So it's a body language. So the parasite landscape is directly reflected with the parasite landscape on Earth. When we suffocate ourselves with dehydrating comfort foods, again, when you're eating food because what you feel like eating, that's emotional eating. The more that you're eating from an emotional place, it's not a nutritious or conscious place. It's emotional. It's an animalistic place. Your identity has to be a more narrow identity. It has to be more bound, more walls. So more limitation. The more that there's an identity, the more you're quantified. And the more that you're quantified, there's more limitation. And with limitation is going to come emotional strife, because then the way that you're going to communicate with yourself, linguistically and emotionally, is from a place of limitation. I can't, this is against me, things are against me, and not realize the oneness. When it is totally oneness, it's just that rejection is actually protection, and there's nothing ever against you. It's just maybe you need to take a step back, breathe, and then you can see the landscape better. When you neglect the breath and make diaphragm expansion even more difficult, the lungs can't expand, and you can't get more air to the lower lungs. That's where more blood is. There's more blood in your lower lungs. So the more that you're not expanding from the diaphragm, the more that blood is not being enriched with the air, with the spirit. Then the blood would circulate, then the spirit runs throughout the whole body and inhabits the whole body. And the breath is what creates the blood. The blood is what creates the bone, which creates the marrow, or which creates the tissue. So it's all starting from the breath, and as the breath amplifies from the heart. You have a metaphysical heart and you have a physical heart. You have your metaphysical heart that's being powered by the spirit, the breath, that is creating the physical body, the physical heart, which amplifies your physical breath, which will be your gases and all that stuff. You're inhaling the dark matter. More quantifiable stuff here. The more that you're inhaling that, the more that you're amplifying the blood with the heart. As that amplifies, then you're going to get your bone and tissue. It's all coming from the breath. The body is just a collection of breath, or dense breath, or you could look at it like the body is a prism, and it's just a concentration of breath. The breath concentrating and viewing itself. It's concentrating. So as the breath concentrates, it solidifies, or it's semi-solid. Everything's kind of semi-solid. And through that process, you get an avatar. You get this illusion of separation through that avatar, so that you can interface with things and everything isn't just mush. Because again, if there was no illusion of separation, then there would be no perception of this or that, up or down, and you would not be able to interface with yourself through physical experience. You'd only have metaphysical experience, conceptual experience, which isn't really experience, it's insperience. So you get your insperience, your conceptual insperience, and then you, through that process of densification of breath, you get your external experience of a concept, which is a life experience, which is experiencing yourself, experiencing your body, which isn't separate from your metaphysical self or your truest identity. So when the blood isn't enriched or circulated like it would, then you're more prone to suffocated thoughts. And when that happens, you're going to have suffocated emotions. And the more that the thoughts don't flow through, the emotions don't flow through, the more that you're going to be backed up metaphysically, and then you get backed up physically. You're going to desire, again, the emotional food, what you feel like eating, instead of what you need to eat, what makes sense for you to eat in this moment. And that's the difference. One is precision nutrition. One is just emotional with limited identity. So the best identity is no identity. Like the best plan is no plan. Expectations make you old. The less you expect, the more you can appreciate. So when parasites flourish in us, we take them into our dream state as well. They steer the body to have traumatic, stressful dreams, so that the adrenals release adrenaline, so that you never really rest, and then you're always tired, and then you desire more food, so the parasites you're feeding them. You know, if you have a human opinion about a taste or a texture, that's a parasite. You're identifying with a concept of yourself. That concept of self is a metaphysical parasite, limitation, which manifests and attracts external parasites and microbials and all that stuff. And as you feed into this concept of limitation, you're creating physical parasites, because you're eating food that you don't need. And parasites will always manifest to eat what you don't need. And as you continually take on things you don't need, it's gluttonous, and you're killing yourself. Ultimately, you're killing the world. So the parasites are doing everyone a service at that point. So the adrenaline energy is extremely powerful energy. You know, I call it Jesus juice. what have you, call it whatever you want. But when you give off fear or stress while in the trance or dream state, you're hemorrhaging your energy, both spiritually and physically. Because again, if you look at cases where people, the adrenaline gets released and people do some amazing things, some supernatural things. That's why I call it Jesus juice. You know, you hear mothers losing a leg, the adrenaline kicks in, and then they pick up the corner of a car to, you know, save their baby, stuff like that. These type of things happen when the adrenaline gets released because it's this supernatural spark plug. And if you're in the dream or trance state and you release that kind of energy, then you're producing dreams that bleed into this reality, that feed the matrix, that feed the beast, feed the false identities, they feed the parasites that come with those. And then the matrix is more of a prison than a prism. So the vampires are, if anybody's seen SpongeBob, Doodlebobs, you know, they're basically, if you make a copy of an archetype and you have this copy that is a more broken template and it's not in alignment with the source, then it's kind of like all bets are off. It's not behaving from an aligned place. It's a broken template. So anybody that knows anything about Doodlebob gets what I'm saying. So the vampires of the Matrix are of the Matrix. They're not of the Spirit. They're not of the Father. They can cultivate the breath. The breath can be cultivated in anything, but it's like if you have a natural plant or a natural animal that was created from nothing into something, and then you hybridize it and create this new thing, this chimera. That chimera is more from the hologram, the Matrix, than from the Spirit. So at that point, the alchemy used to fill the gaps to make that chimera aligned with the Spirit and to transcend that holographic identity and way of being, the only way to do that is to cultivate the breath. Anything is possible through God, through the breath, the Spirit. There's no limitation. So parasites can only feed on fear. Other energy is toxic for them. Just like how fear is toxic for you as a natural person, fear for a parasite would be their superfood. It just makes sense. It's the Tai Chi of life, the good and evil of life. It makes sense. The nature of the unnatural. You have the supernatural, the natural, the unnatural. There's no separation between supernatural, natural, digital. They're all connected. There's no separation. If you can interface with it, it's part of you. There's no separation. But for the sake of discernment, you know, likes attract, or things that gravitate, you know, the heavy sinks and the light rises. Parasites will go towards the fear energy. That's more in alignment with their sustenance. You're going to go, if you are, I don't know, fruitarian or whatever you are, you're going to go more towards warmer climates and things that go, it's more consistent with your blood at that point. The clarity of your blood, the density of your blood. So they don't have the alchemical faculties, parasites don't have the alchemical faculties to process love. So they scavenge your love energy, or you're flipped. You have to trick yourself into converting your love into fear, which makes that energy digestible. It's just like candida. You eat carbs that you can't process. The candida breaks the ethanol and those carbs down to create alcohol so that they can feed themselves. With alcohol poisons you, makes you a subtle alcoholic, and then you might fall from carbs to actual alcohol drinking. But it's just alcoholism, which stems from a bitterness. Emotional bitterness is going to create a desire for sweetness, whether it be carbs through beans, potatoes, or whatever it is, bananas, whatever it is levels, obviously, to this situation. So there's a conversion process that has to make that food, to prime that food for digestion, to prime that energy for digestion. Parasites have to turn the love, or have to trick you into turning the love into fear. Because parasites can't control anything. They don't create anything. They can only mimic. So if you're already afraid of something, the parasite is going to mimic that to try to scare you. to try to echo that thought or whatever. And if you identify with that thought because you're identifying with auditory thought, because you're identifying with a concept of self instead of being self, then you're going to constantly convert your love into fear and feed the parasite. So when you follow and respect the breath, it makes it impossible for a person to engage in jobs or activities that aren't in full alignment with the creator or the spirit. So when you go against the spirit, you're going to need stimulants to force you through daily events. It's subtle, but it is self-rape. It might seem subtle, but it's self-rape. If your job, if you're yawning and you need stimulation and you're sighing in your daily life, then you're not in alignment with the breath, so you're not in alignment with the spirit, so you're not in alignment with God like you could be. God's always there. Your consciousness is always there, but it's taking a back seat. The body is now on autopilot, on auto-tune, because it's a tune-up, it's alignment. So what tune are you on? What rhythm are you on? Which algorithm are you on? Are you on the universal breath algorithm, or are you on a more broken algorithm, a broken template? So when you're self-raping, then you attract external forms of rape, whether it be robbery, because you rob yourself of opportunities to express yourself and realize yourself, then other people are going to do that to you. But that's only so it reminds you of what you're doing to yourself, not because they're your enemy. There's no such thing as enemies. So it's your choice in a sense. You can either be inspiration, or stimulation. You can be steady, have a steady energy, steady flame, or you can have an unstable, raging flame that goes out, starts up, goes out, starts up. So when you walk in the light of God, you walk. You're not running in the light of God, because God doesn't rush. And the marathon continues that way. It's about the likeness. The more that you align with the likeness of the Creator and what comes with that likeness, the more that you are experiencing the Creator in your life in all ways. So that the more that you align with all the descriptions of the Tao. The Tao is the consciousness. So the universal consciousness that we all share, and that is everybody's true identity. Again, the Tao is humble. The Tao is subtle. The Tao is unquantifiable, mysterious. Nothing can be against it. It is always in a state of peace because it's not against anything. The more that you are aligning with the breath, the more that you're going to see which part of you is that. And the more that you realize which part of you is that, this immortal part, which is the consciousness, which is the true you, the more that you are walking in the light of the Lord, however you want to look at it, the more that you are in that likeness. And the more that you're in that likeness of the consciousness, which doesn't pick sides, it's good to saints and sinners. It doesn't have expectations. It doesn't try. It just is. It doesn't know itself. It is itself. Because there's no knowing the ineffable. It can't be known. It's ineffable. But you can be it. And the more that you be it, the more that you see it, the more that you realize. The more it's all about realization, ultimately. It's not about trying. It's not about knowing. The more that you try, the more that you're raping. You're raping yourself. Trying is dying, And that's really about it. I'm going to cut this off at a half hour because, again, I wanted it to be in alignment for Alex, should he choose to use this video later on. And if so, then I appreciate you, Alex. If not, then it's cool. This will be one of my last broadcasts. And I'll have another one for the holidays maybe, and that's about it. 2020 Tantra is still free in audiobook on my YouTube, Tao Lore, TaoLore. And you can find me on Instagram, TAILOR _BUDD5. TAILOR _BUDD5. The info will be in the description, of course. But that's where you can reach me. You can also find me on BitChute. You can also find me, you can find me on Instagram, BitChute, and Facebook under Tao Lore. And that's really about it. Thank you.